Good morning, and thank you for watching our weekly press conference, and thanks for all of you that are here with us as well. We have one topic today, which is reducing crime in Erie. And now we'll present this in three parts. The three parts are: first, a review of Erie's most recent crime statistics; second, a comparison to past year's numbers; and third, the details on what we're doing to make Erie safer for everyone. Reducing crime is central to my team's mission, which is build opportunity, restore hope, transform Erie. To achieve this mission, we must focus on two things. First, trends relative to crime in Erie and stopping crimes from happening in the first place. My team and I will lay out that for you today. We're going to start it off with Chief Dan Spizzarni, the leader of our police department. Chief Dan will explain the context of the problems and the solutions. Chief Dan, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to explain the initiatives on this front. To identify crime trends, the Erie Police Department measures and compares yearly statistics over a 3-year window. When we focused on violent crimes, we saw that 2021 numbers were up compared to 2020. But in 2022, most violent crimes saw slight to moderate drops. That's a good sign that our anti-violence work may be gaining traction. We'll explain a few of these initiatives in a moment. There are several crime categories we've been following. Let's start with the violent crimes. Aggravated assault, from 126 to 146. We're now down slightly to 138 in 2022. Simple assaults, we went from 419 to 446, down slightly now to 410 this year, or past year. Homicide, following the same trend. There were 10 in 2022, 9 in 2021. We're down to 6 in 2022. That's a moderate drop in a critical category. For robberies, we went from 114 down to 83, but we're up to 99, showing a slight rise. Now let's look at firearm-related offenses. Our shots fired have gone from 245 up to 311. In the past year, they were down to 242. Well, people shot went from 56 to 72. They're down slightly to 67 in 2022. Still, it's to remember, one person shot per week, every week of the year. Luckily, they don't die, but some of these victims suffer critical wounds and place a burden on our local medical services. We need to make improvements here. Our gun violence reduction strategies, the gun working group, and the Shot Spotter initiative will hopefully help. More on that in a minute. Let's move on and look at homicides by firearm. There were 8 in 2020, 8 in 2021, they're down to only 5 in 2022. That's a good decline, but in 2022 we had a record number of juvenile suspects, 4, juvenile victims, 3, ages 7, 14, and 16-year-olds. In 2023, we just restarted our juvenile unit and hope to reverse this growing trend of juveniles involved in homicides. Now let's look at the stolen firearms. 136 down to 128, but they jumped up to 148 in 2022. Weapons left in unlocked cars and stolen during burglaries continue to be a major source of illegal guns on the street. Gun owners need to be more responsible in securing their weapons. Firearms recovered by the Erie Police Department in 2020 was 263, up to 286 in 21, and in 2022 we had 308 weapons recovered. These guns that we're taking off the streets, I'm happy to continue to see this number increase. It shows our positive work out there. We'll continue to work closely with the Erie Gun Task Force to follow up immediately on any report involving firearms. On to property crimes. Property crimes appear to be rising in almost all categories. Because major crimes receive the most attention, sometimes the property crimes don't get the full focus they deserve. Auto thefts are on a slow but steady rise, from 133 to 146, up to 159 stolen cars in 2022. People who leave a spare key in an unlocked car or leave their car running to warm up in front of their residence continue to be the main reasons why cars are stolen. We have almost one stolen car every other day. Burglary. The numbers have been consistent here. 383 in 2020, 358 in 2021, was up significantly to 442 burglaries in 2022. Every day in Erie, at least one house is burglarized. Forgeries. Forgeries are holding steady and fraud cases decreased. The big fraud number jump in 2021 were due to COVID-19 workers' comp claims that affected the entire country. Thefts, as you can see, are slowly climbing. On to the sex crimes. Although rapes have declined for 3 years, the total amount of sex crimes, shown at right in the graphic, rose dramatically in the last 2 years. Just briefly, driving under the influence remains high, while arson is slowly declining. I want to spend a bit of time talking about body cameras. The cameras that we use look like this. 2022 was our second full year that the police department utilized body-worn cameras. In 2022, we recorded 106,010 individual photos or videos, bringing a 2-year total to just under 200,000 videos. That added up to almost 70 terabytes of stored data. We responded to 56,530 calls for service in 2022. And of that number, we had 19 citizen complaints that year. 2 of those complaints alleged unlawful use of force. Both cases were thoroughly investigated, and our body cam videos were reviewed. In both cases, officers involved were exonerated. Now, this year we obtained a grant for body-worn cameras, making them available to every officer in the department. We are completely transparent with regard to how we interact with the public, and the body-worn cameras help us do that. And now, a word about how we're combating illegal drug use in Erie. As with so many American cities, opioids continue to be a problem here. I'd like Deputy Chief Rick Laura of our Criminal Investigation Division to talk for a moment about how we handle overdose reports.
Hello, thanks, Chief. In the third quarter of 2022, the Erie Police Department developed, implemented, and expanded our law enforcement diversion programs. The Erie Police Department Narcotics and Vice Unit created a comprehensive opioid, stimulant, and substance use site-based program, which is COSUP for short. This identifies at-risk individuals and low-level offenders for diversion and referral programs. The goal is to help these people get into support programs, get connected with resources, and avoid the possibility of negative outcomes such as incarceration or escalation of involvement in illicit substance abuse. We also created a survival follow-up team with officers focused on those who survived an opioid or illicit drug overdose. These interactions can accomplish several goals. 1, building trust with law enforcement. 2, conveying the serious nature of illicit drugs. And 3, reinforcing to drug abusers that support systems are available for them. This program was made possible by a $500,000 federal grant, the COSUP grant, which is being used to combat the troubling trend of increased overdoses and overdose deaths that we are experiencing here in Erie, as well as across America. Here are some of those recent numbers. In 2021, we had 35 overdose deaths. Police officers at the City of Erie administered 194 doses of naloxone, or Narcan. We had 246 total opioid overdoses that year. In 2022, we saw a rise, 54 deaths, 226 doses of Narcan administered by law enforcement, and we had 286 total opioid overdoses. This year, we continue to see that troubling trend. The first quarter, we've had 7 deaths and 49 doses of Narcan administered by law enforcement as of April 10th. We've also had 64 total opioid overdoses. For the first quarter, we're on an average with last year's numbers, with 1 less death this year. Since the program's inception in the fall of last year, the Survivor Follow-Up Team has tried to help 306 overdose victims. They've reached out and offered services, distributed Narcan to 96 of those overdose victims. Many of these users have accepted services and have been placed in rehab and other support programs. In one instance, our narcotics unit actually drove the opioid user to a rehabilitation program upon their request. I'd like to touch a little on the juvenile crime in the city over the last few years. We began experiencing a troubling trend of juvenile violence taking place in our streets. We saw an uptick of not only juvenile violence victims, but also juvenile offenders committing these violent crimes. Under the leadership of Mayor Schember, Chief Dan Spizzarni, the Erie Police Juvenile Unit was formed to combat this troubling trend. Let's take a look at the numbers. This is from the first quarter of 2023, since the initiation of that unit. 42 reported missing runaway juveniles. They were able to locate 37 of those missing persons and either return to their homes or refer to juvenile services. 41 juveniles have been charged on a juvenile allegation, which will be handled through the juvenile court system. Some of those charges were 12 were charged with assault, 9 other, 7 with burglary, 5 with drug possession, 5 with weapons charges, 3 thefts. The good news here is that we soon have the ability to directly refer juveniles to diversion programs without filing criminal allegations. Several recent major incidents involving juveniles include: we had a 14-year-old who shot his friend, another 14-year-old, in the leg while filming a music video. 4 juveniles were charged with firearm-related offenses. A 16-year-old and a 17-year-old were charged on a Fisher bill for firing multiple shots across East 10th Street on Saturday, February 18th at 3:30 in the afternoon. 1 occupied residence and 3 unattended parked vehicles were struck by gunfire. A juvenile male was struck in the neck by gunfire in the 3000 block of Cherry Street. Juvenile detectives assisted in interviewing numerous juveniles that were present during this incident and helped the Major Crimes Unit with the filing of those charges. And a 14-year-old was charged with making terroristic threats after making statements directed towards Erie High School and a specific teacher threatening to kill her. Lastly, I'm pleased to announce that in May, after a long hiatus, the Erie Police Department will restart our crisis car. Selected officers will undergo specialized training regarding mental health crises and substance abuse, domestic violence, and suicidal individuals. This combined training with numerous local service providers will ensure these officers can handle difficult situations when people need our help the most. Chief?
Thanks, Rick. That's great information. There's a lot going on, but the juvenile unit and the mental health issues are some of the most sensitive and most important that we need to address right away, and we're doing that. I'd like to finish by reviewing crime statistics now from the first quarter of 2023 compared to last year. What we'll see is decreases in incidents in most categories. The first quarter crime data for the Erie Police Department: shots fired in the first quarter is significantly down from 65 to 32. People shot is down from 13 to 9. Now, homicide did go up from 1 to 3. Aggravated assault is up from 14 to 37, which is worrisome for us, but we'll continue to work on that. And our robbery number remains about the same. In 21 and 22, the first quarter amount of recovered firearms compared to stolen firearms has been about twice as many. But this year, we have reported 18 stolen, which is down, and 67 recovered. That's triple the amount recovered. A great proactive job by officers on the street. The first quarter property crime report shows burglary and theft from motor vehicle both down, while theft in general remains about even. Sex offenses are disturbingly trending upwards. DUI incidents are also up, but arson is going down. Lastly, calls for domestic disturbance are trending downward. We've averaged 16 domestic calls per day. To have that number go down is a great benefit to the community. So 2022 may have been a mixed bag of results, but we'll continue our efforts to make Erie a safer city. We begin our outreach efforts this week in the designated burn grant area of East 6th Street to East 26th, Holland to Wayne, where 10% of the city population lives, but they experience 30% of the city's crimes. This grant will allow us to put extra patrols out almost daily. And work will begin shortly to add shot spotter technology to assist in our gun violence task force work, in our gun violence reduction strategy program. Above all, we'll continue doing everything we can to make Erie a safe, welcoming city. Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Chief Spizzarni and Deputy Chief Laura, for that very, very complete update. Your laser focus on these issues, along with the new initiatives you have developed and will soon implement, promise to reduce our crime rates and increase the safety of our residents. Our Erie Police Department is doing incredible work. I'm just going to highlight a couple of the things. There was a lot of information there. If you feel a little overwhelmed, you feel like I do. But there are 4 areas I just want to talk about briefly. One is that violent crime was mostly down in 2022 compared to 2020 and 2021. So that is heading in the right direction. It's not hugely significant. For instance, aggravated assaults were 146 in 2021, and they went to 138 last year in 2022. Simple assaults are down in both from 2020 and 2021. 2020, we were 419. 2021, it was 446. Last year, it was 410. Again, it's not real significant, but it's moving in the right direction. Homicides also dropped from 2022 and 2021. 10 in 2022, 9 in 2021, and 6 last year. Now, I'm sorry to hear we're already up to 3 this year, but hopefully we can keep that under control. Robberies are also down. In 2020, they were 114. In 2022, they were 99, so we were under 100. Now, in 2021, we were actually at 83, so we were up a little bit from that. Second, opioid initiatives. I'm really happy to say that we've identified risky individuals, low-level offenders in diversion and referral programs, and our police are working with them on that to get people into support programs early on when they're abusing drugs. We also created a survivor follow-up team, which are officers who follow up with people who have had opioid or illegal drug overdoses. And really the goal is there's 3 goals related to that program. Build trust with law enforcement, with people that are maybe abusing drugs, convey a serious nature of illicit drug use to people so they realize where they might be heading if they keep doing it, and reinforce to drug abusers the support systems that are available to them to help them. And that $500,000 grant that Chief mentioned is certainly going to help us move in that direction. Third, I just want to talk about the crisis car very briefly. That's been a long time since we've had it, probably over 20 years. I'm glad that we're restarting that. Their job is to respond to crises, especially things regarding mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, and suicidal individuals. So we're really happy with that. And fourth and last, I'm very happy with the reinstatement of the juvenile unit, which has not existed for at least 20 years also, that's up and running again. I'm very, very pleased with that. So thank you for all you guys are doing. Keep up the good work. I look forward to seeing this year's results early next year. So that concludes this week's press conference. Please continue to follow us on social media for the latest updates on everything happening here in the city of Erie. Everyone who spoke is now available for interviews, and thank you very much for being here or watching on TV today. Thank you.